Welcome to Get Rich Education. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Where in the heck is all the housing inventory now? Especially good rental housing. I've got a great action we'll answer for you today. Also, with the trend of moving to suburbia and the work-at-home movement, how the ability to live far from the city is more practical for more people than ever, and how this affects real estate investing today on Get Rich Education. You know, starting in real estate seems hard for some. Even experienced investors can find it difficult to achieve the success that they had hoped for. What if there was one small change everyone could make that would solve these challenges? Allie Boone offers a book that really no one else has. It's an easy-to-understand glimpse into the real estate investing industry and your mindset. It's life lessons on hacking your mind before you hack your wallet. Her book to grab on Amazon is called Not Your How-To Guide to Real Estate Investing. Most rental property investors choose either cash flow or home price appreciation, but one real estate market can give you both. Jacksonville, Florida, with 27% lower home prices than the national median, 1% higher gross rents, and Jacksonville has appreciated 34% more than other comparable cash flow markets over the last 30 years. Get positive cash flow today and appreciation for tomorrow. To invest for cash flow and growth in Jacksonville, go to cashflowandgrowth.com.
You're listening to the show that has created more financial freedom than nearly any show in the world. This is Get Rich Education.
Welcome to Get Rich Education. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. This is where we buy low and rent high. Today is Monday, March 22nd, 2021, for episode 337. You know, a capitalist will tell you that their system works when company A begins to lose business and is forced to innovate and stay competitive because company B undercuts them on price and does a better job of serving their customer. Businesses are incentivized to provide a better customer service or a more efficient widget so that resultantly the money flows their way, or else they go out of business if they can't innovate or serve customers better than that customer's other choices in the marketplace. That's a free market. Well, similarly, some will tell you that this is why the United States is a success. Think of it this way. Each one of the 50 states competes with each other, just like businesses inside capitalism. So a state like Texas or Tennessee or Florida looks attractive, therefore, to many Californians and New Yorkers today. Texas, Tennessee, and Florida can say to the other states, hey, come over here and do business with us. There are lower taxes over here, and there are lighter regulations here. Well, this attracts both new businesses and new residents to those that make these attractive policies, attracting new residents inside their state borders. The states compete with each other and residents vote with their feet by moving there or just staying there and never leaving. Now, within some of these more attractive states for what's a business-friendly climate, and you, often as that out-of-state investor with what's good for a real estate investment, I've long told you that suburban properties are where it's at and where the future is. I have told you this for years, but you know what? Years ago, I sure didn't know that it was going to be a pandemic that accelerated the suburban trend. Do you remember what I told you would accelerate the trend for Americans to live in suburbia? In fact, I discussed this way back on GRE podcast episode number 13, which was released in January of 2015. And I know that so many of you have listened to every episode, so you've heard it, but it's probably been a while. The answer is I thought that the suburban spread would be amplified because of the proliferation of autonomous cars. Yes, also known as driverless cars, and how that would make suburbia more appealing and how proximity to central business districts would not be as important because when your car is driving you and it's driving itself, well, then you could read a book or you could do some work on your laptop or you can even sleep while your car is driving. itself, so a commute wouldn't be as costly to your time that way. A lot of people predict that that's still going to happen, but sooner this pandemic and this desire for space has cropped up. People want elbow room. That's what's driving suburban demand before autonomous cars could gain wide adoption and deepen the suburban trend. But yeah, Texas, Tennessee, Florida, they're just a few of the many investor states that we favor here. Now, I've seen both appreciation and an increase in my rent amounts in my own investment properties in those places. In fact, I'm refinancing some of them right now, and I just got the appraisals back the other day, so I know how much appreciation that I've had. Take these two rental single-family homes. I bought these two in 2018, late 2018, so 2 to 2.5 years ago. I'm refinancing them both right now. The first one I bought for $166K, and just last week the appraisal came in at $195K. So let's see there. That's $29K of total appreciation. So that's appreciation of nearly 8% per year on that one. And then the second property I also bought in late 2018, and I bought it right around the same day as the first one. I like to batch my buying for efficiency. This one was bought back then for $145K, and last week its appraisal came in at $185K. So on an annual basis, this one has increased about 12% per year. All right, so around 8% annual appreciation on the first one, 12% on the second one. That's an average annual appreciation gain in aggregate of about 10% there. Of course, not only is this just the one way that you're paid in up to 5 ways in real estate, of course, I'm also leveraged. So being leveraged at around 4 to 1 with 75% debt on these properties, that means that my gain is 40% on my skin in the game, on my equity. Yeah, 40%, and I'm being paid 4 other ways in addition to that. And as a GRE listener knows, those 4 other ways in addition to appreciation are cash flow, return on amortization, tax benefits, and inflation profiting. Long term though, be mindful that this 10% capital appreciation is more than an average historic appreciation rate of something closer to 6% over time. These 2 properties that I'm refinancing were resale properties when I bought them. But when I say resale, that means that they were not new build properties. They were renovated property. And generally, new build properties appreciate more than resale properties, and they sure have been lately. So I've been enjoying some nice gains lately. I hope that you are too, kind of following my plan here all along to buy leveraged cash flowing properties in growth markets. That makes sense. And then not to mention, these 2 appraisals that I got last week are for refinancings where my interest rates expect to drop from their current 6% on each one of them down to where we've locked at 3.75% on both. Now understand that a lot of times where you see an increase in the price of your property like this, you don't really know whether that's due to true appreciation, which is what we often call it, or if it's merely inflation that just diminished the purchasing power of the dollar. A lot of times it's really a mix of both appreciation and inflation that you see reflected in this increased price of your property. But here's the interesting thing. In this case, it's pretty clear that the price increase that you've seen on your properties recently, it is more due to true appreciation and not so much inflation, because inflation is still fairly mild. Appreciation, that's happened due to the high demand and the low supply, like I've talked about on plenty of other shows here lately, and also quite a bit on our Get Rich Education YouTube channel lately. When President Biden signed the recent $1.9 trillion stimulus package into law a couple weeks ago, that included $1,400 direct payments to a lot of people, which probably include your tenants that receive that income. Well, this release of almost $2 trillion into the economy, that can really stoke inflation. But it can take some time to see high inflation. Printing mass dollars like this is kind of like throwing more wood onto a wood pile. But it takes a spark called the velocity of money to light that ever taller wood pile of dollars. It's basically more dollars plus velocity is what it takes to equal higher inflation. So what is velocity, this spark that you ask? Well, it's getting us out of the low demand environment, our recessionary economy that we've been mired in, and it's getting, say, here's an example of velocity. Okay, say you buy an Uber ride and you pay your Uber driver $20, and then later the Uber driver spends that $20 on flowers for his wife, and then in turn that florist that got the $20 from the Uber driver buys more flowers from their horticulturalist supplier. Well, that's velocity right there. That is dollars moving in an economy, competing for goods and services, and driving up demand, therefore driving up prices. So when you have that effect of velocity, like I just described, plus more printed dollars overall, that's the recipe for more inflation in your economy. If you think that's going to happen, even to a moderate extent, you're going to want to own more good quality property tied to a loan before that inflation comes. And yes, I give you these examples of what's happening with my real property because I do invest right alongside you. So just do what I do. Copy me. Buy from where I buy, which are nationwide providers at greturnkey.com. That's where they are. Well, with inventory being run down to unprecedented levels lately, more of you have been asking, where is the actual property inventory? That is a germane question, no doubt. Over the past several years, America has between 1 and 1.5 million homes for sale at any given time. Those homes include condos as well. But now we're down to about 450,000, under 500,000 homes available. Well, I've been listening to you. I've got an answer for where the inventory is. Good inventory with something actionable today. Yes, we're going directly to where the available property is in a good growth market here. Coming up on the show in future weeks, it includes insights from two brilliant economists here as Daniel Ammerman returns to the show to discuss real estate economics, both your primary residence and your income properties. It's been about 5 years since he was last here. And also the return of one of our more recurrent guests in show history, Richard Duncan, as we discuss inflationary prospects and more macroeconomic takeaways for you. That's in future weeks, but first, straight ahead, I've got something highly actionable for you, where the inventory is, and it's pretty educational too. I'm Keith Weinhold. This is Get Rich Education. Hey, is your IRA in a real estate syndication? Yikes, a 37% UBIT tax could hit you, but you still have a chance to set up your EQRP and avoid this. Did you make too much money in 2020 and need more deductions? Now federal law lets you set up an EQRP in 2021 and get deductions for last year, retroactively. Even put old IRA and 401k money in Bitcoin, gold, or your own business. Get control of all of your retirement money, tax and penalty free. Text EQRP in all capital letters to 72,000. The people that our listeners can't stop talking about are Ridge Lending Group and MLS 42056. They provided you with more loans than anyone. It's where I got my last few loans, and they finance single-family income property up to fourplexes. They're the #1 lender for both beginners and veterans. Start your pre-qualification, chat with President Chaley Ridge personally, and you'll end up with your custom plan for expanding your cash flowing portfolio. Start at ridgelendinggroup.com.
This is Richard Duncan, publisher of Macro Watch. Listen to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold, and don't quit your daydream.
Leah Slaughter is the CEO and co-founder of OmniKey Realty with a strong portfolio of commercial and residential properties throughout Texas. She has personally acquired, overseen, and managed over 1,000 properties in more than 14 years. And she's also a licensed realtor. She's active with NARPM, that is the National Association of Residential Property Managers. And she has a number of other real estate certifications. It's so impressive. I'd have to name so many that you just get lost in the alphabet soup of them if I name them all. She also enjoys giving back to community. Leah, welcome to Get Rich Education.
Thank you so much for having me.
You and your company have presence in so much of the Lone Star State, and I think a lot of people have heard good things about Texas. Texas is a thriving state with 5 of the top 10 fastest growing cities in the United States. Texas has the second largest economy in the United States, and really such a business-friendly climate that they typically lead the nation in job growth. So just the Texas overview. Dallas-Fort Worth is in the northeastern portion of the state. You've got San Antonio and Austin somewhat in the center. Houston is in the southeast, but oftentimes when we think of major markets to invest in, we get ballast when we have a diverse economy. And few will argue that really Dallas-Fort Worth has the most diverse economy. I mean, I've said in the past that if Dallas goes down, the entire nation goes down with all the influx of people and jobs in the diversification of those sources in Dallas-Fort Worth. So talk to us about some of the momentum that Dallas has and where we've gone in the last few years. What's happening in Dallas-Fort Worth, especially with the residential real estate perspective, Leah?
I think a lot of this really started, if you go all the way back to the crash, where Dallas really fared quite well. We started building our infrastructure and our development in the middle of the crash. And you might listen to that and think, well, that's crazy. Why would anybody build during that? But the truth is, North Texas is at our core business friendly, and we knew exactly what was going to come. So we invested in our roads and our airport in the middle of the crash, expecting this crazy boom and growth that we've seen. It started with the Enterprise Fund. And if you're not aware of what that is, I certainly would recommend looking that up. It was an influx of massive amounts of money and incentives to get large businesses here. And it's one of the core reasons why we saw things like Liberty Mutual and Toyota and all of these entities and Fortune 500s that influx to Texas and specifically North Texas. We started with a huge housing shortage. We had over 545 people a day relocating to the area back when I started talking about statistics, and it's just increased from there. And one of the things that really sets us apart is our geographic location and the expansiveness of our area. We have the second largest number of highway capita miles in the United States, and we have highways that are HOV lane friendly, and we have toll roads and average speed limits around 70. So I say all that to say that in North Texas, you can live 30, 40 minutes from your job and literally live 30 or 40 miles away. And so what that allows us to do, unlike other large metros, is have an expansive area to keep prices down. If you look just at size, we're the 4th largest metro in the United States, and we are the only one that is still considered an affordable housing market. We still have tons of properties under $250,000. People make almost the same income here that they do in other areas, but the cost of living is anywhere from 1/3 to 1/10 of the other large metros. And so when we look at the diversification of North Texas, the employment, the areas they can live, where they can commute to, it's a completely different world. And so it's an insulation that we just don't see in other markets.
Yeah, we talk about that geography specifically when we hone in on Dallas-Fort Worth, which locals call the Metroplex. You brought up this proximity with the outlying areas and how one can have transportation to get closer to a job. And of course, now that we've had pandemic times, we've had the work from home movement. It seems to many that proximity to the central business district is probably less important than it's ever been in American history.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And one of the unique things that we see about North Texas and DFW is that Dallas is not where the employers are. If you look, over 1/3 of our Fortune 500 companies are in the suburbs, and almost 100% of those that have relocated are in the suburbs. And so even going back years, the pull was not to be in the core of the city. The pull was to be in the suburbs. And then everyone relocating here is going to the suburbs. And so we can completely disregard the inner cities. We can disregard the higher crime areas, go into these suburbs. And the incredible thing is that you can either buy in these suburbs and be 30 minutes to the Fortune 500s, or you can stay in the suburbs and work for places like Texas Instruments and Tyson Foods and Finisar, who does the Apple Face ID technology. So even in these further suburbs, they are massive employment centers. When we're looking at what areas we're going to sell to meet our criteria, the world is our oyster. There's just so many options. And so it allows us to keep inventory high, keep prices low, and really just have this incredible opportunity for growth because we're not having to deal in the inner city.
What else should someone need to know when they're looking to consider purchasing residential real estate in Dallas-Fort Worth today?
One of the biggest things I talk to people about is this just incredible growth that we've seen. And so we always want people to purchase based on the merit of cash flow and the merit of the property itself. And we deal predominantly in new construction. So about 90% of our properties are new construction. And there's a lot of benefits to that. one of the things that we capitalize on is this continued appreciation growth. And although we have no crystal ball, there's no guarantees in this world. One of the things that I do look at are the other markets that are, quote, similar to us, the other big top markets. And if you look at what their price is relative to their employment, and of course, we had a negative employment, we had more people than we had. It's just incredible, right? So you've got all these people moving here. You've got all these jobs moving here, but there's not physically enough people to fill the jobs. And so then we had more jobs than we had people to fill them. The employers were competing for workers, and it really was this complete trifecta. And then you look at all the people relocating from New York and California, which they're predominantly going to Texas and Florida. They're paying cash for properties, bidding up the market. There was an article that came out last week that almost every property is going over asking. Now, that's incredible when you look at the fact that we're in a market like Dallas and like Fort Worth. And so, what we see is this incredible price growth, but then we also see a shortage of multifamily housing. And so one of the things that we look at when we're scoping an area is to make sure that we're not going to have problem finding tenants. So I look at some of the major markets that we work in. Sherman-Denison is a great example. It's one of the 10 fastest growing areas in Texas. It has tons of major employers I mentioned a few minutes ago, but there's almost no multifamily. And so when we look at these areas where they're bringing people in to work for Tyson and Finisar and all these companies, and there's no property to fill that need. Now, one of the things people ask is, well, why is that? And the reason is those multifamily builders, once the market started to grow, they have no reason to go to a cheaper market. Why not go build down in the city, go build in Plano and Frisco where they're building high rises for $1 million a condo? They have no reason to go out to a suburb where they're going to build for 100 or 200,000 a unit. And so we've seen this complete lack of multifamily building in these markets that we serve. We provide these Class A, beautifully finished out properties, and new construction is fantastic because there's a lot of incentives up front to be doing that. Number one, we're buying in infill areas. And so you're buying in really cheap, the area rebuilds, and then at the end, the values skyrocket. We're not even waiting on appreciation. We don't need price growth. It's just a fact that the city is beautifying itself and value naturally rises. The other piece of this is when we look at new construction, the property tax value starts out at bottom dollar. Most of our properties, if they're not finished January 1st, that first year, you're paying a property tax on land only value. So that first year, your property tax bill may only be $300-400 or less. So that's $3,000 or $4,000 in cash flow the first year you pocket just because you bought a new property.
Now, this is key. This is really interesting because when a lot of real estate investors think about Texas, they like a lot of the dynamics there, but they think, well, the property taxes are higher in Texas, though, but you've got a workaround.
We do. And, there's no state income tax here. And so property taxes are one of those things that once you understand how it works, you really don't have a problem with it because you understand it's part of the investment play. So what happens is January 1st of every year, the assessor comes in and they tell you what they think your house is worth. Generally, it's a lot under actual market value. So you've already got some benefit there. But when we look at new construction and especially infill, they're pricing you against older homes all around you. So they have a very hard time comping you.
Great
and
point.
So generally, we see it take 2 to 3 years before they even get close to market value. I've got properties that we got 2-3 years ago that are only at 70% of value on the property taxes. And so there's this huge incentive to doing infill and new construction. But then what we are doing is we're constantly every year watching the market, watching the prices. And once that value gets up and your property tax bill goes up, we immediately recommend a 1031 exchange. We handhold you through that whole process and we help you double your portfolio every 2 to 6 years. Most of our customers are doing it every 2 to 3. And the way that we work, so everything's under one roof. We have investment acquisitions, investment sales, the rehab and maintenance, the management of all of that, and then, of course, the regular property management. We do quarterly visits at all of our properties, so we make sure they're in great condition all the time. We hold tenants fully accountable for any damages or issues. And what that allows us to do is have a show-ready home 24/7. And so once we or the tenant gives notice, we can start showing that property the last 2 months of their lease, and we secure new tenants before that tenant leaves. That allows us to keep our vacancy rate very low, and it also allows us to seek top dollar every turn. So about 90 days out from the end of a tenant's lease, we run market numbers, and we're going to contact you and tell you what the market's doing and whether or not we feel it's time for you to go ahead and look at doing a 1031 exchange. And because of our volume and because of our contacts and everything that we do, we have tons of property available all the time. So you can sell that one where the property tax has gone back up because we'll start with a return 16 to 20% cash on cash. And by the time that property tax value value gets all the way up to what the actual value is, you're back down around 7%. So why sit in a single digit return when you could keep exchanging property and sit in double digits indefinitely? And that's in addition to the fact that you can use the equity, principal, pay down, and appreciation to double the property because you pull enough out to go buy two. And then with our lending partners, we have incredible lending terms that you don't even have to go Fannie Mae and put it in your personal name. There's just so many different facets to what we do to allow you to build your portfolio as much as you want, but ultimately the choice is yours. You may decide you want to buy one and sit in that one property until you die, and that's totally fine too. But if you follow our model and you follow what we're ourselves doing, what you're going to find is that you're going to quickly move on that path to retirement, or if you're retired, be able to build a better nest egg for yourself in your retirement.
You bring up so many interesting things there, Leah. The job in the area attracts the resident. The property is what attracts the tenant. You deal with so many new construction properties there. And when you go infill like you do, meaning where you build a new project on a vacant lot where there are already existing homes around where that property is, that gives you a few advantages. You mentioned the property tax one, and that helping keep your property taxes lower in the early years because you do have those older comparables around your infill property that are often less valuable. One reason that other people like infill projects is it's another layer of a foundation for the price of that property, because think about it, in that neighborhood where you have that new construction infill home where you might be putting 20 to 25% down, whether that's a single family home or a multifamily, the homeowners around you typically have substantially more equity, 50%, 80%, even 100% equity. So they are less likely to walk away if there were some incomprehensibly bad downturn. Another advantage is one is in an infill project, they already know what the neighborhood around them is going to look like. They don't have to wait to see what's been built because it already has been built. So you talk about an interesting strategy with the 1031 tax deferred exchanges and how you use that. Savvy investors like 1031 tax deferred exchanges because it resets their leverage ratio and it increases their velocity of money. But tell us more. I think you did explain it somewhat already about how you use that as a vehicle to really go reset your low property tax bill.
Exactly. So we'll take a new construction property that someone's owned for 3-4 years, and that property tax bill is no longer discounted. And what we also see is that values, and for example, we have areas in Texas that have gone up 10-20% this year. As your value goes up, your property taxes go up, your insurance goes up, because everything is based on the value of the home. And rents predominantly go up 3 to 5% a year. So just day one, as long as the market's appreciating, you're going to have about a 5% loss a year. We look at all of these factors and we look at how much equity you have and we say, okay, well, you bought this, and I'll use simple numbers. You bought this home for $100,000. It's now worth $120,000. So you have the initial 20% you put down for $20,000, and now you have a new $20,000 in growth. That's enough to go buy 2 homes. And so we're constantly using those 1031s to be able to leverage into more. I personally did a 1031 exchange this month already, and I turned that one exchange into 15 properties. And so it just depends on how you leverage and what loan programs you do. But we have a lot of lending options that allow you to capitalize on equity as down payment. And so often if you're doing some of our rehab options, you're only bringing 5 or 10% down. And when you get into that playing field and that level of property, your money is going to go so much further. The other piece is that leveraging is key. Okay. And so when we look at returns, we don't run cap rates. I think cap rates are the biggest disservice to investors. And the reason being is it looks at a one size fits all. And that's just not the way that investing works. The leveraging is key to the return. We want to look at cash on cash returns. And that's because that tells me how much cash we are making on the cash that we've expended. And when we're looking at interest rates right now, which are virtually negative interest, which means that you're making more money on what you're borrowing than what it costs you to borrow it, it's extremely important to maximize leveraging. Now, I'm not saying to go have no equity in your property. What I'm saying is that if you have a property that you fix up and you've got 30% equity at the end, why would you put another 20% down on top of that and therefore have 50% equity in a home where your cash on cash return is going to plummet? It's very important to us that leveraging is a part of the equation. And because of that, we have lending partners that are direct banks, easy to work with, low documentation requirements. They allow you to buy in a trust or an LLC or a personal name. And you can go in and do these properties with any type of lending term that fits that project. And so when we first start working with an investor, we're going to talk to you about what your goals are, what you want to look at, what type of property you want to buy. And then we're going to refer you to the right people to do that. And we receive no kickbacks or referral fees from the people that we we send you to. And that's key because we're not getting paid for you to work with these people. We only send you to them because they help your investment journey and the investment vehicle that we're really putting you on. So you're welcome to use whomever you'd like, but most of our clients do go through our preferred partners because the loan programs just can't be touched anywhere else.
You do have such an integrated and holistic program there where you really help guide an investor through that so that they can see the life cycle of their investment as it continues to transfer through more and oftentimes larger properties. And you said one thing that might catch some people's attention. I know that you're not a mortgage lender yourself, but the 5 to 10% down, that can be attractive to a lot of people. That's a leverage ratio of 10 to 1 or 20 to 1. So can you just briefly speak to that and how that works?
So I'll give you an example. I bought a package of 7 properties yesterday in Denison, one of the areas we're talking about. And I bought the package for $535,000, and I'm going to put about $300,000 in them. So I'll be in it for $825,000. That's what's considered my cost. So that's purchase plus repairs. I look at the end value of over $1 million. So let's say it's worth 1.05 when I'm done. That means that at the end, I'm going to have about $200,000 equity in this package. And we roll our repairs into our loans. So they don't care what the purchase price is. They don't care what the repairs cost. They care what the all-in cost is. So I'm walking into this project with 20% equity. So when I go to the bank and I'm seeking financing, I'm asking for a 90% loan to cost. So what that means is that I'm only going to borrow 90% of that $850 cost instead of bringing 20% down. And they're willing to do that because I have this 20% equity built into this package. When you buy distressed properties or rehab properties, or even some of these new construction where we refinance a year later, we are able to take that equity and literally use it as down payment in lieu of bringing money to closing. And that's a great tool for investors that really want to maximize their cash. Someone like me, I have a primary business. It funds my purchases. I have cash coming in every month to use. Someone who's working a regular W-2, we have people that are school teachers, people who are bus drivers. We have anything you can think of. And we're going to put you on the same investment vehicle, whether you're buying 1 property or whether you're buying 100. And our goal is to take whatever amount of cash you have and maximize it to help you get as much money as possible, cash flow, as much appreciation as possible based on the growth of the portfolio, and of course, as much deduction as possible on your income tax by having the depreciation of the property. So we're looking at all the different facets and each piece of the real estate puzzle to make sure that you are maximizing what you have to work with, whatever that may be.
So you have this great integrated program for investors if they choose to opt into it long-term to help grow their portfolio. As far as dropping back to the tenant side again, you do have some good strategies there as well for helping your investors attract and retain those long-term tenants. As you know, we want to avoid that vacancy and turnover, the bane of every cash-flowing investor. Can you speak to that in your tenant retention side?
So as I mentioned, property management is all in-house, and we do everything from handling the maintenance. We do quarterly visits. We have 50 people on the team, so it's vast operation. But what that allows is us to provide the right product. So we don't work with slumlords. We don't work in really bad properties. And we make sure by checking on the properties and holding tenants accountable that we have a beautiful home. We've already built it to a Class A standard. And of course, beautiful properties tend to attract better tenants. And so our tenant quality is very high. But then you also look at the shortage of properties that allows us to be even more selective. We always make sure we have at least 1 month's rent of security deposit. We also use something called deposit insurance. And so if we're dealing in multifamily apartments or areas where maybe people don't have enough money to bring $4,000 or $3,000 to move in, they can pay a few dollars a month for deposit insurance. For you, it's the same because the coverage is the same, but for them, it's not upfront, it's paid monthly. And so certainly as we navigate things that can change in the world, I mean, look at what the last year has been. We are always working to be creative to make sure that our market is not effective, our market being our rental properties. And so from an in-house leasing team to vast marketing, including full MLS marketing, Facebook Marketplace, self-showing lockboxes so that they don't have to work around our schedule. Everything we do is designed to attract and keep the right tenant. Our average lease length is about 30 months on our new construction. And right now that's worked out perfectly for our resale side. And so it really just is the perfect trifecta of everything to work out exactly the way we want it to.
Yeah, that's really great. And there are really pros and cons during any phase of an investor's life cycle based on what's happening in the world. And I think that one pro today is that us as real estate investors have the historically low mortgage interest rates. And a con, though, however, is sometimes it's difficult for us to capitalize on those. Whether we're doing a 1031 exchange or a new purchase, it's difficult to find that inventory because we do have that historic dearth of inventory, unlike anything that I've ever seen in my life. So can you speak to the inventory that you have and how you do keep a robust inventory for investors?
One of the things that really sets us apart is our inventory. So we have a investor portal that once you work with us, you'll sign your paperwork with us and you get access to your own investor website. And it's up to date with performance market information, property information. We do daily property blasts the moment things hit the market. And we have anywhere from 100 to 150 properties available at a time, which for our market and what we do, it's really unparalleled.
That's astounding.
It's hard work, I'm not going to lie, but we have tons of people that build property for us. We do not just work on market property. We do a lot of off market. We work wholesale. We work multifamily and single family. And we are constantly bringing property to people. And because of our great lending terms and because of our relationship and our reputation, people are much more willing to work with us. A lot of property, they don't want to work with investors. Investors are difficult. They tend to be more picky and their financing is more finite. So by having these relationships, by having the reputation that we do, even builders that won't sell to investors will sell to us. And so it makes a huge difference in our inventory. We also have a non-compete and a non-disclose as part of our rep agreement. And so anyone who's working with us can't go transmit those properties to others to try to circumvent us. And our people won't allow circumvention either. And so it really protects the integrity of our builders, of our properties, and of our market list. At any given time, we have plenty of inventory for anybody looking.
Tell us more about that inventory, the types and the prices.
So our average purchase price is about $160,000 for a new construction single family. And we look at anywhere from about $140,000 to $200,000 for new construction single family, depending on where it is. What we find is that once we cross that $200,000, really even closer to $190,000 threshold, the return is not as great. Also, I find that the appreciation doesn't happen as quickly or as stable as it does in the sub $200,000 market. The other piece is I think it offers some insulation against market downturns because, again, we are the fourth largest market in the United States. And imagine going to LA and finding a property for $150,000 or Chicago. It's just not going to happen. And so we really feel there's a lot of upswing to these cheap properties and we're building them beautiful, probably nicer than homes many of us live in. So it's really an incredible opportunity. Granite countertops, vinyl wood flooring, custom cabinetry, custom tiled showers, thick baseboards, tall ceilings. It's just incredible. When you look at the pictures of our properties, you're going to be blown away.
The level of inventory that you have is remarkable, and so is the fact that it's new construction single-family homes that you can still build for under $150K. This is remarkable, and it's a big reason why I'm having you on right now. You do have available inventory at affordable price points and a lot of it. Leah, is there any last thing that you'd like to tell our audience about, whether that has to do with the market or the properties or the management or kind of this unique sort of system that you help investors with?
The one thing I'll say is I would do your research on North Texas. I think a lot of people don't understand how many factors are working in North Texas' favor between the business development, the abundance of land, the highway system, the enterprise fund, and also the cost of living. So I highly encourage you, wherever you're investing, do your market research, but specifically make sure you look at the information about North Texas, because in my opinion, there's not another market that even comes close. I'm blessed enough to have lived here my whole life, to have built my company here and all my other companies here. And truly, at the end of the day, the market is what allowed it to happen. Yeah, I work hard. I have an amazing team. Our model is great. But without what our market offers, we wouldn't be able to do any of this. And what I see coming, and of course, again, I don't have a crystal ball, but what I see coming is a very California-esque change in North Texas. And if that continues to happen, as we've already been seeing it, I don't even know how high values can go. I mean, at this point, the fact that we still have properties as cheap as we do blows my mind. And I don't know how long it's going to last. So I'm going to ride the wave. I've bought over 100 units in the last 12 months, and I put under contract this month 20 already. And that's 20 single families plus a multifamily and a commercial. So I'm all in, and I highly encourage you to do your research because I don't know how long it's going to last.
Leah is an active investor in the market, much like I am, investing oftentimes right alongside you, doing a lot of the same things that you would do with buying income property, using prudent leverage, seeking cash flow, and those sorts of things. Well, Leah put together a great report for you where she describes a lot of what she talked about here and more, and that is at getricheducation.com/Texas. Learn more about what she does for you and more about that inventory that we've talked about. Leah, it's been great having you here on the show.
Thank you so much.
Well, you've got to love Leah's energy. To answer the question, where is the housing inventory that's actually available now? It's right here in North Texas. Again, they do 90% brand new construction at single family homes up to fourplexes and larger multifamily property too. If you've got idle cash that you've been waiting to deploy, I really don't know how much longer you can get properties at these prices like with what we've discussed today. They've got that great way to help you reduce your property taxes there too, as mentioned. I was just looking at some of their new construction offerings here myself, like a duplex in Sherman, Texas for $319K, a single family in Greenville, Texas for $171K, and some as low as the 150s. Some good news for an opportunity here is that I'm happy to tell you that Leah and I are going to host about an hour-long North Texas Properties webinar for you this coming Friday. That's March 26th, and it is at 3 p.m. Eastern. That's 2 p.m. Central, 1 o'clock Mountain, and 12 noon Pacific. So just 4 days from now, this is an actionable opportunity where you can reserve available properties. I really don't know how much longer you're going to be able to get property at such low prices when you do consider the rate of appreciation that we've had lately, the relentless influx of new Texans, the specter of more future inflation potential and more. So having available inventory itself is somewhat of a novelty these days. You probably at least owe it to yourself to learn more about this. Again, it happens this coming Friday, the 26th. If you've already indicated past interest at getricheducation.com/Texas, we will send you the webinar link. And if you haven't yet, we'll be sure that you get it. You can just indicate your interest there at getricheducation.com/Texas. I hope to see you on the free webinar with us this Friday. Until then, I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Don't quit your daydream.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.
The preceding program was brought to you by your home for wealth building, getricheducation.com.